Today, we are diving deep into some seriously big upgrades to India's GST system. And I mean big. We're talking about a brand new court designed to speed up justice, a crucial tech fix on the GST portal that will make life easier, and two landmark legal rulings that are really changing the game for businesses all over the country.
It really makes you wonder. After all these years of tweaks and adjustments, is India's GST system finally maturing? The changes we're about to break down, well, they definitely suggest it's taking a huge step forward. So let's see exactly what's on the table.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the new GST court, which is set to completely change how disputes are handled. Then, we'll jump into a smart little tech update for credit notes. After that, we'll unpack two major legal rulings that bring some much-needed clarity. And finally, we'll wrap it all up and talk about why all this stuff really, really matters.
First stop, the Goods and Services Tax Appellate Tribunal, or as we'll call it, GSTAT. Seriously, businesses have been waiting for this one for years, and it's about to fundamentally reshape how GST disputes get resolved in India. To really get why GSTAT is such a game changer, you have to look at how things were before. Until now, if you had a serious GST dispute, your only option was to go to the high courts. And let's be honest, they are completely swamped. This meant massive delays and often different rulings in different states for the same issue. GSTAT flips the script entirely by creating a dedicated, specialized court just for GST. The whole point is to get faster, more consistent justice, with new benches popping up all across the country.
So, when is this all happening? Well, get your calendars out because January 21st, 2026 is the date to watch. That's the target for GSTAT to be fully up and running, with all its members in place across all the new benches.
So what makes GSTAT so special? Let's break it down. First off, access. Benches are being set up in tons of cities, so you won't have to travel halfway across the country. Second, expertise. Each bench is a mix of legal experts and tax pros who live and breathe GST. And this last one, this is huge. There was an old rule about having to file appeals in phases, which was a real pain. That's gone. Revoked. This gives taxpayers immediate, full access to the appeals process. Okay, next up, we're shifting gears from the courtroom to the computer screen. This is an update to the GST portal that solves a super common and, let's face it, super frustrating headache for businesses: dealing with credit notes. Okay, picture this, the old way. A supplier sends you a credit note. You go onto the portal, you accept it, and bam, the system automatically reduces your input tax credit. But here's the crazy part. What if you were on top of things and had already reversed that credit in your own books? Well, the portal didn't care. It would force a second reduction anyway, creating this nightmare of a double reversal that was a total mess to fix. But the solution? Oh, it's so beautifully simple. The new process introduces one incredibly powerful step. It gives you a choice. Now, when you accept that same credit note, the portal actually stops and asks you a simple question. And here it is. Reduce ICT, yes or no? That's it. The default is still yes, but now you have the power to click no if you've already handled it. This one tiny change puts the control right back where it belongs, with the taxpayer. It prevents those awful double reversals and just makes life so much simpler. It's a common sense fix we've all been waiting for. All right, time to pivot to our third section, two massive legal rulings. Now, these court decisions are absolutely critical because they're finally bringing some much-needed clarity to some really tricky and debated areas of GST law. This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of the first case. It poses a massive question. When you buy a company that's coming out of insolvency, are you suddenly on the hook for all of its past GST baggage? And the court's answer was a huge relief for investors. They established what's now known as the clean slate principle. It's exactly what it sounds like. Once that company is bought, the new owner gets a totally fresh start. Any of the old company's past GST liabilities that weren't sorted out, poof, they're gone, wiped clean. This is a huge deal because it gives businesses the confidence to invest in and turn around struggling companies. Now, our second case deals with something a lot more common: renting. The big question was whether renting out a property to be used as a hostel is exempt from GST. And man, this case went on quite a journey. First, the tax authorities said, nope, no exemption for you. Then the High Court stepped in and said, actually, yes, there is. And finally, it went all the way to the Supreme Court for the final definitive answer. So here's the core of the debate. The tax department argued that because the company renting the building was a business, the exemption for a residential dwelling shouldn't apply. But the Supreme Court looked at it with a whole lot more common sense. They ruled that what really matters is the end use of the property. Since people were living there, it's residential. Simple as that. They basically said you can't just add extra conditions to the law that aren't actually written there. It was a landmark clarification.
So we've covered a new tribunal, a key portal update, and 2 major legal rulings. Now, let's step back and connect the dots. What's the big picture? Why does all of this actually matter for you and your business on a day-to-day basis? Here are your key takeaways, the bottom line. Each of these changes points toward a more grown-up, stable GST system. GSTAT brings efficiency, giving you a faster and clearer path to resolving disputes. The legal rulings bring predictability, creating clear rules of the road so businesses know where they stand. And that portal update, that's all about giving you more control, which means fewer errors and fewer compliance headaches. Put it all together, and it's a much clearer, more business-friendly environment.
And all of this brings us to one final big question. With a dedicated court, clearer legal precedents, and a smarter tech platform, are we finally watching the era of GST uncertainty begin to fade away? It's a pretty exciting thought to consider as this landmark tax system continues to evolve. Thanks so much for tuning in.